deep passion for helping people. He is so generous with his time, and honestly, Stewart, you have just become such a dear friend to all of us here at Zinzino. So go ahead and take it away, Stewart.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's such an honor to know you and to be your co-host. Thank you so much for all of your years of service of being a nurse and being on the front lines. My entire career has been focused around the dietary supplement space, and the highlight of my career was ultimately working with the healthcare professionals through Nordic Naturals. I helped to build their medical and scientific advisory board. What an honor. And I had the privilege of attending the International Society for the Study of Fatty Acids and Lipids. I've been a member of the Global Organization for EPA and DHA. So what I'm going to share with our professionals tonight is what I've learned from the very, very best. And that picture of me jumping up in front of the Nordic Naturals building was the fact that early on in the history of the omega-3 test, I learned about the at-home omega-3 blood spot test that we're going to talk about tonight. I believe I'm the one that introduced it to Nordic Naturals, I believe in 2006. And the first paper on the omega-3 index was published in 2004. So I learned about the omega-6-3 imbalance and the omega-3 index, and I was able to take that very important information and share it all over the world. And it's how Nordic Naturals won the fish oil wars. We became the #1 brand because of our commitment and dedication to education. So in this press release back in 2012, American health expert urges omega-3 testing to save New Zealand health system millions. Now, the problem that we faced was that we were not able to deploy enough tests. We weren't able to get the job done, even with the biggest fish oil brand, Nordic Naturals. And then finally, all of the people that created this science and category, nobody was able to participate in the growth of this industry. The only people that were able to make a living were the fish oil manufacturers. So when I was introduced to Zinzino a couple of years ago, it solved a massive problem. Number one, we now have a platform to get the test out. And number two, we have a vehicle for healthcare providers to be able to participate. Now, the statements that I will make and we will make tonight have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, which is no problem because that's not what we're doing. Zinzino's mission is to become the #1 preventive health company in the world and to keep healthy people healthy. And that's never been harder to do. When we talk about the Zinzino business, success as a Zinzino partner is not guaranteed, but rather influenced by an individual's specific efforts. I've been with Zinzino for the last 2 years, and many of my colleagues from Nordic Naturals have joined me. We have found tremendous success here, and we hope that you find the same. Now, back in 2004, the Food and Drug Administration, we call them the agency, granted what's called a qualified health claim for omega-3. It reads supportive, but not conclusive. Research shows that consumption of EPA and DHA omega-3 fatty acids may reduce the risk of coronary heart disease. And we have come a long way since 2004, and I get to share that with you tonight. Now, several years later, at the Global Omega-3 Summit on Nutrition Health and Human Behavior in Bruges, Belgium, the leading ivory tower experts, people like Sir Dr. Michael Crawford, Dr. Thomas Brennan, Dr. Susan Carlson, and many, many others, Dr. Michael Lewis, MD, who works on our team, all of the experts got together and they signed a consensus statement. Anybody can find it online. And they signed that agreed that brain and heart disorders resulting from omega-3 deficiency are the biggest challenges to the future of humanity. When I first heard that, I was a bit gobsmacked, and it sounds hyperbolic, but that's coming from academics. These are not marketing people. Associated costs are currently bankrupting healthcare systems and threatening wider economic instability worldwide and here we are, and it hasn't gotten better. And Zenzino is part of, if not the solution. Now, at the same time, Bernadine Healy, MD, who, by the way, was the first female NIH director and president and CEO of the American Red Cross, said, no nutrient is more important for decreasing cardiovascular death and more lacking than omega-3s. So why all of the disparate and conflicting results in double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized human studies? Because they were not deploying the blood spot test to determine omega-3s at baseline, among other co-founders. So when I was introduced to Zenzino just over 2 years ago, and someone said to me, hey, Stewart, have you heard of the Norwegian omega-3 blood spot testing company? I said, you mean Nordic Naturals, the company for which I was the face of? They said, no, the brand they use in Europe called Zenzino, which means a small piece of great value. I had never heard of them, and I've been to Norway a lot. And when I learned that their mission was to become the biggest preventive health company in the world, that is how I attracted my mentors and heroes to become independent partners with us. Now, in the old days, there was a lot to learn about fatty acids, and you really had to be into the subject. We kind of called each other fatheads out of a little respect, disrespect. But thank goodness, now that we have these simple at-home blood spot tests where you prick your finger and you put 2 drops of blood on the blotter, you really don't need to learn this anymore the way we used to, which is really good news. What's important to remember from this slide, if you look at the top of the slide, the red box for the delta-6 desaturates, omega-6 and omega-3 from the land. Omega-3s come from green leafy vegetables on the land, and omega-6s come from seeds and nuts. They compete for conversion and placement, although it is rather rate limited. What we're going to talk about today, when we talk about omega-3, precisely we're talking about what's called the omega-3 index. And for our new healthcare providers that have not yet heard that term, it was born in 2004. Doctors Clement von Schacke and Dr. William Harris coined the term the omega-3 index, which is simply the percentage of the bioactive EPA and DHA as measured in the red blood cell or in whole blood. And it's EPA and DHA that make the largely anti-inflammatory hormone-like compounds. And it's EPA and DHA that also make what are called the SPMs, or the specialized pro-resolution lipid mediators. So today, when we talk about omega-3 and the omega-3 index, it's the percentage of EPA and DHA. We want that to be 8% or higher. Today, when we talk about the omega-6-3 ratio, we're not talking about all of the omega-6s and all of the omega-3s. That has been debunked. We're specifically talking about omega-6 arachidonic acid, which makes the largely pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, relative to omega-3 EPA that make the relatively anti-inflammatory eicosanoids that dampen inflammation and support the resolution of inflammation. So when we talk about the omega-6-3 ratio, we want that to be 3-to-1, 2-to-1, or 1-to-1. That would be 1 part omega-6 arachidonic acid to 1 part omega-3 EPA is considered a perfect score. 2-to-1 is passing. 3-to-1 is passing. Anything above that is what we call the danger zone. Now, if we go back to 1972, my probably favorite visionary in this whole space, Sir Dr. Michael Crawford, published evidence that the brain requires arachidonic acid, which comes from the land, and docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, that comes from the sea, specifically for its growth, structure, and function. Arachidonic acid derives from omega-6 fatty acids, DHA from omega-3 fatty acids. He also pointed out that for optimal brain function, The brain also needs eicosapentaenoic acid, EPA, and other omega-3 derived fatty acids. The takeaway is now we know what the biomarker is, 8% or higher on EPA and DHA, and an AA-EPA ratio of 3:1 or lower. And in his book, The Shrinking Brain, with a foreword by William Sears, MD, who's another famous omega-3 scientist, The Shrinking Brain and the Global Mental Health Crisis, Two Problems and One Solution. He argues that we came about at the interface of the land and the sea on the shore or in the Rift Valley, that the omega-6s come from the land, and that's critical for the brain, and omega-3 DHA comes from the ocean, also critical for the brain. Now, after many years of Sir Michael Crawford telling us this would happen, just in April of 2025, the ODS, Office of Dietary Supplements, the agency, finally updated the guidance on DHA omega-3 for preterm and early preterm birth prevention. This is the first time a government agency has acknowledged the criticality of EPA or DHA. For the first time, because technically, EPA and DHA are not essential fatty acids. Keep that word in mind, because I'm going to show you a paper that Crawford and his peers just recently wrote. So the agency recommended that all women of childbearing age receive at least 250 milligrams up to 1,000 milligrams of DHA daily. And I nearly fell out of my chair. It finally happened. My former boss from Nordic Naturals, she called me and she said, "Hey, did you see what the agency just said?" I said, "I did." And she said, "Isn't it eerily familiar to vitamin D like David?" She said, "When we were kids, it was on the milk carton. When you worked in the health food store," and I did, "it was on the bottom shelf. You don't want vitamin D. It's fat soluble. Could be bad for you." Then they told everyone you need 400 IUs, 800 IUs, 1,000 IUs, and now we don't guess, we test. The exact same thing is happening with omega-3 in real time right now. All women of childbearing age, I just can't stop saying that. Now, just recently in Progress in Lipids research, the titans, some of them here, Michael Crawford, Susan Carlson, Tom Brenna, Norman Salem Jr., and a few others, they got together and look at the title of this paper, Omega-3 and Omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids in neurodevelopment and prematurity, correcting imbalances, this is going to be the catchphrase for today, and closing the preterm PUFA gap. PUFA stands for polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now listen to their play on words. There can be little doubt about the essentiality of omega-3 DHA and omega-6 arachidonic acid for the brain. So they're saying, I know technically they're not essential fatty acids because the body can make them, but there can be little doubt about the essentiality of these longer bioactive, highly unsaturated fatty acids. Nature has already provided the answers. We must listen and learn. And so you run that paper through your large language model, whichever you're using. And my robot, Zeno, I named after the philosopher, said that the key findings translated simply are balance matters more than absolute intake. That's why we were missing the boat. It's not just more DHA. It's the ratio between omega-6 arachidonic acid and omega-3 DHA and EPA that drives outcomes. And then higher omega-6 relative to omega-3, these are from the terrestrial sources, may compete for enzymatic pathways and alter brain lipid composition. So restore balance, don't just supplement blindly, and that's what Zeno is teaching. At about the same time, Crawford and his landmark work was the historical work of Dr. Hans Bang and Jorn Dyerberg. Between 1971 and 1978, Danish physicians and researchers published 3 very important papers on their work with Greenland Inuits. The dogma at the time was all fat was bad. If you remember Ansel Keys and the 7-country study, he's the one that pushed the agenda that saturated fat increased cholesterol, and that was the target. He oversimplified. The paradox was that in the Inuit diet, that a high-fat diet equaled low heart disease. And my mentor, William E. Lands, PhD, the godfather of the omega-6-3 balance, said, Stewart, wherever you find a paradox, that's where you ask the next question. So the entire omega-3 world was born out of this research with the Inuit. High levels of EPA and DHA, the hypothesis was that omega-3s protect heart health. What they missed and what Zenzino found was that the diet of the Inuit was not the ideal diet, but the Inuit were eating seals and whales, that were eating fish, that were eating algae. And that the algae is where all EPA and DHA comes from. It all comes from the algae. And the algae is protected with polyphenols, technically called fluorotannins, that protect the EPA and DHA, ensure they get through the trophic levels of the fish and ultimately into the tissue, which is the issue. So these Inuit were eating huge amounts of polyphenols that at the same time help them recycle trace amounts of vitamin C in the whale skin and in the seal skin because they never had any scurvy and they didn't eat fruits and vegetables. They also had other nutrients in the marine web that are equally as important in many respects, iodine, and then manganese, zinc, copper, and selenium that are required for the antioxidant signaling to protect the fatty acids in the brain. We have found recently a few others, one in particular that I'll talk about maybe on another call. But the point is that the Inuit diet was more than just EPA and DHA. Now here, in some unpublished data that Zenzino is working on, we're going to show you here the difference between taking no supplements. The yellow line are other brands, and the green line at the bottom represents balance oil, which is the solution that Zenzino has created. I'll review this in a bit. It's more like eating food and less like purified EPA and DHA. And so this paper is suggesting, now these are thousands of women before they're pregnant, they're not pregnant, all the way through exclusively breastfeeding. And the summary reads, balance oil users, this is the solution that Zenzino has created, it's called balance oil. Balance oil users seem to have an earlier onset of DHA transfer during pregnancy, supporting optimal fetal brain development. And during breastfeeding, balance oil users maintain a higher DHA level, beneficial for meeting the demands of both mother and baby, hypothetically, potentially less postpartum depression. There's certainly evidence that when we can get higher levels of DHA by the third trimester, and even in the NIC unit, that we can see an increase in IQ. To the left of the graph, balance oil might provide a better inflammatory balance milieu, as indicated by stable AA-EPA ratios across all stages. So what Zenzino is contributing to the omega-3 world is more than a small piece with great value. It's a big piece with tremendous value. Now, the history of omega-6 to omega-3 balance, I've had taught to me is really the history of human civilization. If we would have had the technology to test people back in 1850, it's been theorized that people would have been in balance because omega-6 and omega-3 compete for the same enzymatic pathway and it's rate limited. This does make sense. In the 1960s, however, was the turning point. It's not conspiracy, it was industry. We put a man on the moon, we beat Imperial Japan, we beat the Germans, and we had starving children in Appalachia. So the Farm Bill was passed. Back at that time, a calorie was a calorie. We didn't care about the difference between nutrient-dense and calorically dense food. So we pumped soybean oil into the entire food supply to deal with starvation here in the United States of America. Now, soybean oil is very rich in linoleic acid omega-6, which is different than the biologically active arachidonic acid, but it's used in processed and packaged foods because it's so stiff and shelf stable. So the advantage also ends up becoming the disadvantage you'll see in a moment. So if science is recommending a 3-to-1 balance between arachidonic acid and EPA, and the average person today is 25-to-1, That's 25 times more arachidonic acid, that's largely pro-inflammatory, relative to 1 part EPA, which helps to suppress inflammation and resolve inflammation. And even the lay public, when I show this to people that are not medical professionals, they get it. We were in balance and now we're out of balance. And we finally have identified the safe zone. 3 parts AA, 1 part EPA is the safe zone. Anything above that is the danger zone. Now, this incredible work from Joe Hibbelin, MD, from the NIH and his colleagues, look at that chart of soybean oil. Now, you turn on the internet and there's this raging debate right now about are seed oils really, really bad? Well, let me frame it like this. If you are consuming 8% of your total caloric energy from omega-6, you would then need 8% of your total caloric energy of omega-3 just to stay in balance with the short chain fatty acids. I read a paper yesterday that showed that seed oils that have been oxidized, right, in over frying, that the gut microbiota just deal with them differently. And those should not be confused with linoleic acid from avocados, which are clearly healthy. So this imbalance is really all that matters. You don't need to become a lipidologist or spend your time studying these things anymore. We need to test every patient. So this is how it affects your cells. When you're out of balance, our cell membranes are just not optimized. That semi-permeable membrane with gates and channels is not optimized. What do I mean by that? In the absence of EPA and DHA, that cell membrane has more saturated fat and more linoleic acid, which is relatively stiff, which is why it's great for shelf-stable food. That's bad for our cells. It's good for shelf-stable food. As a result, nutrients are having a harder time getting into the cell. Metabolic waste products come out slowly. And then we have that lipid bilayer around all of the organelles and the mitochondria. So our goal here is to achieve a healthy cell membrane, which is considered now the brain of the cell, where the nucleus is the hard drive. Thank you, Dr. Bruce Lipton. When we get back into balance, we can achieve a healthy cell membrane by having a 3-to-1 balance between omega-6 and omega-3 and an omega-3 index of 8 or higher, allowing nutrients in and waste products out. Another benefit is our red blood cells are twice the diameter of our microcapillaries. And if you are deficient, you have a low omega-3 index below 6, that red blood cell can't become half of its size to get into the microcapillary. So if you want a healthier inflammatory response, healthier brain function, hair quality, heart function, skin, inner organs, joints, and muscles, there is no reason why every single patient shouldn't know this number. It's probably the most modifiable risk factor. Now in 2024, the massive data started coming in. The first paper that mentioned the term the omega-3 index was in 2004. 20 years later, the headline reads, an imbalance of 2 healthy fats affects your early death risk, study finds. It's one of the things I love about Zinzino, their precision and their accuracy and their commitment to science and truth. The lead author said, we found that a higher omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is associated with a greater risk of early death. This comes out of the UK Biobank. If you're not yet following this cohort, you really should. It's like Framingham, but infinitely larger, using a population-based cohort in UK Biobank of 85,425. Our study revealed a strong association between the ratio of circulating omega-6 to omega-3 PUFA and the risk of all-cause, cancer and CVD mortality. Earlier this year, higher omega-3 blood levels linked to reduced early onset dementia risk despite being APO4E. This is exciting. New research links higher blood levels of omega-3 fatty acids, which you would only know if you were testing. There would be no way to know if you were not testing, to a 35 to 40% lower risk of early onset dementia, regardless of an individual's genetic predisposition. While DHA is vital for the brain, thank you, Sir Dr. Michael Crawford, non-DHA fatty acids like EPA showed even stronger protective association, likely due to their anti-inflammatory effects. And the last bullet point, achieving an omega-3 index of 8%, which could be the takeaway of this entire hour we're going to spend together, attainable through daily supplements like balanced soil or fatty fish like sardines, is identified as a key target for long-term brain health. Prostaglandins, leukotrienes, and essential fatty acids, known as PLEFA for short, is the journal for lipids. And this powerful paper says omega-3 blood status is a modifiable risk factor for many diseases. Public health officials should take steps to emphasize the significance of omega-3 in preserving the health of the US population. And in 2018, we crossed what I like to call the Rubicon. The New England Journal of Medicine published the Reduce It trial, multi-centered, gold standard, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, 8,000 patient, the gold standard of science, and then approved that capsule called Vasipa the year after in 2019. And everything changed because this is no longer grandma's cod liver oil or the epidemiology of eating fish. Now we're talking about standard of care. So earlier this year in the Journal of the American Heart Association, cardiovascular outcomes with icosapentaethyl, that's simply the pharma name of the ethyl ester version of EPA. It's not even an oil at that point. It's bonded to an ethanol molecule. That's how drugs are. By baseline low-density lipoprotein cholesterol, a secondary analysis of the Reduce It randomized trial. In the blue box, among statin-treated patients with elevated trigs and higher cardiovascular risk, icosapentaethyl, EPA, reduced the rate of cardiovascular endpoints irrespective of baseline LDL cholesterol, including patients with optimal LDL cholesterol control. So the omega-3 people that have been teaching me and mentoring me and publishing these papers for years, they're taking a little bit of a victory lap here. So the 2026 American Heart Association guidelines came up. American Heart Association and American College of Cardiology, their key updates. And if you look at the right-hand side, we now have drugs for the production, absorption, and clearance of cholesterol. Some of these drugs, like the new PCSK9 inhibitors, are injectable. They're incredible for familial hypercholesterolemia, but they've now added EPA for residual inflammatory risk. And they're recommending a Mediterranean diet. This is standard of care. I was so excited when this came out. I couldn't even contain myself. I'm like just dancing an Irish jig. Finally. And I've had many doctors say to me, now, wait a minute, you get a little too animated. Why can't I just prescribe this drug to all of my patients? Well, you can, but let's take a look at how you get it. Below the blue box, in adults with clinical atherosclerotic coronary vascular disease or with diabetes that are older than 50, with one or more ASCVD risk factors with persistently elevated trigs from 150 to 499 on maximally tolerated statins, the addition of omega-3 may be reasonable to lower atherosclerotic coronary vascular disease risk. The guideline highlights that omega-3 EPA reduces ASCVD events, including CV death, MI, and stroke. Do you know how much trouble we would get in if we put that on the label? Because that's not what a dietary supplement does, but that's what omega-3 does. So that's why this is so provocative, beyond statin effects, with the benefits seen even at lower baseline LDL cholesterol levels in subgroup analysis. Look to the upper left. Here's the target. Now they want everyone below 70. This is going to capture residual inflammatory risk. And in the Journal of Clinical Lipidology, a brilliant paper, William G. Franco, MD, young doctor, first major publication, William Harris, PhD, he coined the term, the omega-3 index. Young William G. Franco was smart enough to add, this is math, the omega-3 index to the pooled cohort equation. So the pooled cohort equation is what your cardiologist used to predict your risk for coronary vascular disease. She looks at your age, sex, race, total cholesterol, HDL, blood pressure, diabetes, and smoking. They've now added the omega-3 index, which is the percentage of EPA and DHA in the red blood cell. We want that to be 8% or higher. Look at the blue box on the right. The paper argues that the omega-3 index should be considered for inclusion in standard clinical risk assessments. One day, just like that, you're going to go into the doctor, she's going to draw your blood, and you're going to see you're deficient in omega-3, just like vitamin D. And we are ahead of the curve right here. Why? It reveals hidden cardiovascular risk, not explained by cholesterol, blood pressure, or smoking, pointing to inflammation, membrane structure, as we discussed, and even heart rhythm regulation. High risk is if you have an omega-3 index of less than 4%. Intermediate risk would be 4 to 8%. And if you believe that your omega diet or your diet is cardioprotective and you can't test to prove you have more than 8%, that's like saying, I know my blood pressure's good. Nobody would do that. So your red blood cell fatty acid profile predicts risk of death at a level comparable to traditional risk factors. The medical doctors and clinicians that are on our team have told me this appears to be the single most modifiable risk factor. So would you like to take a test to find out your results? Zenzino is the leader in Scandinavian kitchen table medicine, is what we like to call it. We're taking concierge medicine and functional medicine, and we're disrupting the entire playing field by allowing patients to test in the privacy of their own home, and then to have the highest quality products at the lowest price sent to the front door, and healthcare providers get to participate and get remunerated for it. So the entire experience is the Netflix of omega-3. It's the Airbnb of omega-3. What do I mean by that? Netflix didn't create entertainment, and Airbnb didn't create housing, and Uber didn't create transportation, but they put it all together, and so did Zenzino. I stood on stages around the world and argued that Nordic Naturals had the lowest levels of oxidation. We were the best product, so trust us. Zenzino shows up and says, let's take a dry blood spot sample at home so that we get a baseline. Here you have a third-party independent laboratory called Vitas, and you take your number and you put this into the website. And if you don't have this number, you're not going to get the results. Then you start on the balance oil, which is more like food. It's not purified fish oil. It's a Mediterranean diet in a bottle. Allow me, I'll explain in a moment. Then the patient gets the results right on their phone, which is where they live. In their phone, it's where everyone lives. So just admit it. That's our new home, is the phone. And you get this big red box that says you are unbalanced. And then Zenzino says, this is brilliant. If you're larger, you take more. They send you a little shot glass. I didn't even know what this was for when they sent it to me. If you're bigger, you take more. If you're smaller, you take less. And this is brilliant. They said you need to wait 120 days before you test again. When I first found the blood spot test, everyone was afraid to prick their finger. And we didn't know when you were supposed to test again, maybe after a year. Zenzino says no. If all red blood cells turn over in about 120 days, we're going to send you a second test with your 5th month so you can test yourself to prove that you're in balance. This entire concept is called the balance concept. All the samples get sent here. to Vitas Analytical Services. This is the birthplace of dry blood spot testing. They flew me out there to see it with my own eyes. Unbelievably impressive. If any of the professionals on this call ever go to Norway, please let me know, and I will be happy to set up a meeting for you to take a tour of Vitas Analytical Services. It will blow you away. And they work with the Max Planck Institute, University of Cambridge, King's College London, University of Oxford, Bristol Myers Squibb, GE Healthcare, Abbott Labs, BASF, and their number one customer is Zinzino. Why? Because we've been able to test 1.7 million people. They have the largest database of these dry blood spot tests anywhere in the world, and what we have found is alarming. 97% of people fail the test. 99% fail in the United States. This is our publication from last summer. This is the largest observational study on dry blood spot testing ever done, with 590,000 globally sourced dry blood spot samples from over 70 countries around the world. This is how committed we are to making the world a better place and to leading with science. They also have a solution. It's brilliant that you identified the problem. Now let's take a look at the solution. Only 120 days to get you back in balance. So these brilliant people at Zinzino unlocked a few of the paradoxes. Why is it that the epidemiological observations of people that ate a lot of fish ended up being different than some of the randomized controlled trials? Well, they realized that when you over-process fish oil, that it's not the same as eating fish. And that when you process fish oil, you remove all of the antioxidants in the algae that helps to protect the omega-3 and get it into your tissues, like the Inuit were eating. It was brilliant what they put together. So here's a nice reminder. All EPA and DHA, every bit of preformed EPA and DHA on Earth comes from marine microalgae. Now, don't confuse this with the EPA and DHA that you make from alpha-linoleic acid, from desaturating and elongating to EPA. And this is preformed EPA and DHA, 20 to 22 carbons long, 5 or more double bonds. Those are the bioactive lipids that make the eicosanoids. Every bit of it comes from marine microalgae, and the zooplankton eat the algae, and the polyphenols help to bioaccumulate the omega-3. And the smaller fish eat the zooplankton that eat the marine algae, and the polyphenols help to bioaccumulate the omega-3. And by the time it's turned into fish oil, gold and flowing and free of oxidation, it is nothing like algae at all, because it's missing all the cofactors. So the processing problem is sort of like milk. It's like infant baby formula. Infant baby formula was missing arachidonic acid and DHA. And finally, they put it back in. It's in breast milk. They did the same thing to cow's milk. They processed it so much. You've got to put vitamin A and vitamin D and calcium back in there for it to be worth anything. Well, we do the same dumb thing to fish oil. And we have to, because of pollutants, heavy metals, PCBs, dioxins, fire retardants, microplastics, Fukushima. Remember that? We need to remove all of it. But during molecular distillation, under a vacuum, where we separate molecules by weight, we remove the contaminants and the cofactors. We get rid of the bad stuff and the good stuff at the same time, because all omega-3s come from algae. And they're wrapped with this polyphenol ring. Technically, they're called fluorotannins with a P. And the polyphenols wrap around the omega-3s for protection, like our parents did when we were little kids, to make sure we get to where we need to go. And if you're taking purified fish oil, denatured fish oil, I like to call it naked fish oil, you're missing the cofactors. So we put them back together using pre-harvest premium extra virgin olive oil. Why? Olive oil is the richest source of polyphenols, and humans have safely consumed it for millennia. These powerful antioxidants that are cardioprotective and anti-inflammatory and protective compounds are also fat-soluble, lipophilic. When we combine them together, they recreate the protective coating of the omega-3s so they can travel together through digestion. It mimics nature. So when I'm presenting this information, people say, time out, I use fish oil. That's not what this is. This is balance oil, a synergistic formula that's scientifically proven based on 1.7 million tests to get you back into balance. We start with the highest grade natural triglyceride form fish oil, as good or better than anything on the market, as good as Nordic or better. But we don't stop there. We pump in this pre-harvest premium extra virgin olive oil during distillation in a nitrogen blanket. You can't drink olive oil and fish oil, jump up and down and make balance oil in your belly. I've got one practitioner that actually challenged us. They took our super high quality olive oil and gave the patients another brand. So they said, here, drink this high polyphenolic rich extra virgin olive oil and take some fish oil capsules. And then they tested about 50 patients and they didn't get the results of balance oil. Why? Because balance oil is made on a molecular level. The polyphenols wrap around and protect the EPA and DHA. It is radically different. And when you look in the literature, polyphenols and fish oils are more like food, like sardines. And in this paper in Molecules, it's been reported that the combination of these nutraceuticals can lead to a 3-fold increase in glutathione peroxidase activity, the enzyme that makes glutathione, as well as a 50 to 200% attenuation of common inflammation biomarkers as compared to their individual capacities. When we look at the oil stability index, the balance oil is infinitely more stable in the bottle, but more importantly, more stable in the human body. Please look up some of these antioxidants in olives, specifically hydroxytyrosol. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. They use it in stroke models. It eats microcalcifications in your arteries. It helps to recycle vitamin C like Charlie. It's a prebiotic that feeds gram-positive bacteria to out-proliferate gram-negative bacteria. You put them together, and it is the Mediterranean diet in a bottle. Love this paper. Sustainably sourced olive polyphenols from 2021. Sustainably sourced olive polyphenols and omega-3 marine lipids, a synergy fostering public health. Let's read this blue box together. This is alarming. Natural polyphenols present in marine oils play an essential role in protecting omega-3 lipids from oxidation and autooxidation. Listen closely, ensuring that no pro-inflammatory products are formed after intake, as often happens with the assumption of refined omega-3 concentrates. Whoa, no wonder it wasn't delivering on the promise. It was missing all of the cofactors. Look at that graphic abstract. Olive polyphenols and omega-3 marine lipids, that yin-yang symbol with the olive and the fish. I mean, that summarizes what balance oil is all about. So here's a brilliant case history of a healthy, vibrant woman who owns the farmer's market in Rancho Santa Fe, who's a longevity researcher. She was the strength trainer to the Navy SEALs. She participated in the Eco Challenge race. It's like the Ironman, but you run through a swamp or something like that. She's a beast. And she blew me off and said, Stewart, with all due respect, this is my area of expertise. Certified in nutrition from Cornell. She's a longevity researcher. She's been to all 5 blue zones, 80 other countries. She was adamant. I take omega-3 every day. I fast. I own the farmer's market. I said, well, let's prick your finger and find out your number. 3-to-1 is passing. She scored 23-to-1. And look at her omega-3 index, 3.1. You want that to be 8. Now to the right side, her arachidonic acid was 8.4. And she was primarily a plant eater at this time and then became a pescatarian. But her AA is perfectly at 8.4%. her omega-3 index, you want that to be 8 or higher, it's 3.1. When you're below 6%, that red blood cell can't get into the microcapillary to carry oxygen, and she's a super athlete. So she got this score. She was inconsolable how freaked out she was. These are her results after Zinzino. This really could be and should be the entire presentation. Here's what we have to offer you. Check engine light on, check engine light off. We want everyone we love, every patient, every human walking the earth with green test results. There's 6.3 billion people deficient in omega-3. We're going to run out of breath, all of us, before we test enough people, and we need your help. This is the statistic that made me feel comfortable to become a Zinzino independent partner just over 2 years ago now. First, I failed the test, so that was a wake-up call. But I know, who cares if I failed? Who cares if I passed? There's 6.3 billion people deficient. But this statistic, 95% of those people taking a balanced oil product daily have an omega-6/3 ratio of near 3-to-1 after 120 days. That's a 95% success rate. That is why we have been able to attract the who's who in the omega-3 space into our team. Here's my score. Before with Nordic Naturals, after with Zinzino. I scored 13-to-1. I was embarrassed. I was humiliated. I actually did cry. My wife can tell you. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I feel like a fraud. What I'm doing isn't working, and I'm telling everyone to take this stuff, and we're missing the boat." Now, I'm a skeptic, and I like food, and I didn't stop eating French fries. I'm just going to be transparent. I like French fries. Well, I got that 3-to-1, and then I stopped ordering the French fries. And that was the rate limiting factor for all healthcare providers. How do we get our patients to take better care of themselves? Well, here's what happens. When they prick their finger, they are invested in a different way, and it's a 1-second solution. You don't have to tell them to change their diet, and they will. You don't have to tell them to change their diet, and most of the time they will. Now, Zinzino doesn't stop there. We also introduced the world to a brand new gut health test. The added benefit of getting back into balance is shifting the metabolism of the amino acid tryptophan, which is ubiquitous in the human diet, from the inflammatory pathway towards the anti-inflammatory microbial pathway. That's called the indole pathway, specifically converting tryptophan into IPA, which stands for indole-3 propionic acid, which enhances gut barrier integrity, antioxidant defense, and brain-derived nootropic factor BDNF. And here it is. You no longer need to reach into the toilet. Stool samples are helpful. Looking at zonulin and lipopolysaccharides, that's good information. That's a diagnostic test. That is not what this is. This is a metabolomic test that is a system map. Instead of showing you who's there, that's the microbial diversity, our test shows you what are they doing. We call it the functional output. So if you'd like a deep dive on this, we created this, we've added this to the world. Just like Clemens von Schacke and Bill Harris, PhD, coined the term the omega-3 index, we coined the term the gut health index. So if you want a deep dive on this, read this article. Cassandra Stern in NutraIngredients interviews Martina Torrenson, the lead PhD on this project. I love the highlight. Q&As, and Zinzino bets big on blood for gut health. Here's what you don't want: a low gut health index with a moderate IPA level or a low IPA level. That's not what you want. This is the metabolic fingerprint often seen alongside leaky gut, even before overt permeability markers rise. When you have a high IPA, IPA is a signal of microbial balance and epithelial resilience. High levels of IPA equal good gut-derived antioxidant and barrier tight junction protector. And if you have low IPA, equals impaired tight junctions, increased permeability. IPA is only made in very, very, very healthy people. You need to have the right gut microbiota, the right anaerobic bugs, specifically Clostridium sporogenus. And tryptophan is metabolized by Clostridium sporogenus and makes indole-3 propionic acid that goes back up into the brain, and it scavenges free radicals. And unlike antioxidants, it's a suicide scavenger. So IPA is a measurement of the gut-brain immune axis. This is what you want, a high gut health index. Our patients, your patients, don't need to understand all the chemistry. They don't. They just need to know green good, red bad. A result like this argues against clinically meaningful leaky gut. And we have a health protocol that our Chief Science Officer, Paul Clayton, has assembled, which really covers about 80 to 85% of foundational nutrition, the highest quality products I've seen since 1985 at the lowest price. So that it's direct to P. I call D to P, direct to patient. And so you've got your Mediterranean diet in a bottle. The Xenobiotic is a prebiotic blend of 8 different fibers, 3 different chain lengths. Extend is a multi-immune food supplement. So that's where we're going to get the iodine from and the other cofactors in the Inuit diet. We're going to get all the vitamins in their food-based form, the minerals in their more bioavailable form. And finally, Viva, to the lower right, is based on saffron. It's a nootropic for the brain. It's also incredible for your guts. So in the next several minutes, let me please introduce you to this incredible company that can help you quantifiably and measurably improve the health of your patients while simultaneously helping you cover some of, if not all of the overhead of your practice with little to no stress on yourself or your staff. Zenzino, which means a small piece of great value, founded 20 years ago. Ask yourself, if you're new to this call, have you ever heard of Zenzino? I had never heard of this incredible life science company that people in Europe are using to tremendous success. The blue dots are the Zenzino offices. The red dots are the Zenzino sales directors. We're just taking what's a raging success in the rest of the world and bringing it over to the Americas. That's all we're doing. It's a publicly traded company, which is very important for transparency. The ticker is ZNZNF. We're also available in 52 countries around the world, so we have healthcare providers on our team. There are 3,000 in Germany, in our biggest market, that then have their colleagues and then their patients of their colleagues all over the world sharing these products, and the provider gets to continue to earn money based on the recommendations to cover their overhead. It's a really very smart system. So the recipe for creating $1 billion industry is simple. Find a problem that affects millions of people, offer a solution, and deliver it through an entrepreneurial distribution system. Zenzino found a problem that affects billions of people. So when I'm on an airplane and I find that I'm sitting next to a healthcare provider and they ask me what I'm doing, I take out that little napkin. I used to have one right here, but I just handed it to somebody. But I write it down on the napkin. 97% of people tested have a problem. We have a solution that works 95% of the time. We know because over 1.7 million people have taken the test. The first test shows the problem. The second test shows the solution. We can solve the problem for about $50 per month. Any questions? And the doctor looks at me and she says, well, what is it? I said, it's the balance between omega-6 and omega-3, the omega-3 index. Arguably, the next most important number that your patients don't know that they will know. And we are so far ahead of the trend and we need your help and you can participate in it. Wow, tell me more. Well, when it hits trend and we're not there yet, not everyone's willing to prick their finger. Not yet. COVID came. We're getting closer. Botox came. We're getting closer. GL1P agonists came. We're getting closer. We're very close to people not being afraid to prick their finger. And when that happens, and 2.5%, I didn't know that that was what a trend was. Like with the iPhone, I think I'm the last human being to buy an iPhone. 2.5% of people had an iPhone. I think I had to have 95% of people had an iPhone before I bought one. But a trend is 2.5%. That will be 8.2 million tests. I know it's a busy slide, but look at the left side. We're pre-trend. We're not trend. We're pre-trend. What do I mean? We've only tested 68,000 people. We've tested 1.5% of Scandinavia and the Baltics. Will we test 1.5% of the United States if we've tested 1.5% of Lithuania? Yes. When we test 1.5% of the United States, that's 5 million tests generating 1 billion in sales. And my challenge was the only people that could participate in this were the fish oil manufacturers. Now as a Zinzino independent partner, you can participate as well. In Canada, it's subterranean. And to get started, the value proposition for your patients is a remarkable value. You start your own Zinzino online store so that you don't have to house products in your practice anymore. Now, this is my area of expertise. I spent my life on the road going to doctors' offices. I have a library of pictures where you think you're walking into Whole Foods supplement section inside of somebody's office. And that's not the smart thing to do. You want to divest yourself of everything analog and make it all subscribe and save, outsource the functional testing, the shipping, the packing, and everything to Zinzino. Offer your patients the same products that you're taking at the same price you're paying and still make money. Let me say that again. Offer the same products to your patients that you're taking at the same price that you're paying and still make money. That is brilliant. So let me please put my retail apron on for a moment. This is $180 this test retail. As a Zinzino independent partner, you can offer it to your patients for $127. The oil is $65 retail. You can include that compliments of you. Test in a bottle, $127. We also have it in capsules. Then the oil is $47 a month. I've had a lot of people say to me, why are you and all of these important science people involved in this? Because of market efficiency. This is twice as good as Nordic at half the price. Twice as good, half the price, sent to the patient's front door. The trend is your friend. $127 test in a bottle. The shipping gets refunded. The patient gets their own portal, their own website to manage their subscriptions. Unlike FullScript, they share their link with 4 of their friends. They earn their products for free. The provider earns money. On the 5th month, you get your second test for free. We offer 2 tests and a bottle of oil for $127. That's 70% off. Can you see why we are successful? All we're doing is disrupting functional medicine and dietary supplements. Your patients can love it, share it, get free products, and your practice can earn the money. Your patients will see right on their phone, wow, I'm unbalanced. 120 days later, I'm balanced. You can also charge for the fingertip prick. And many of our providers say they work with Zinzino because it empowers their patients. I've noticed that when people prick their own finger and put the blood on the blotter, they're more invested in the results. Now, to start your Zinzino online store and to become an independent partner with us, it's so easy. We have what's called the basic or ultimate kit. The ultimate kit is the ultimate value because you get 10 tests. You get a total of $3,000 worth of product for $1,195. Now, you can just keep buying that kit every month. We still have people that do it. Price it and sell it. You can do that if you want. Or you put them on subscribe and save and let those recommendations just grow around the world. At the end of a year, when you have 25 bottles, not people, 25 bottles on subscription, they will refund you the entire investment to start your online store. Very Scandinavian. Same opportunity in Canada as well. And this is what's in it for your practice. As soon as you have 100 bottles on subscription, the practice is earning about $14,000 a year without having to house the product, without having to deal with shrinkage or expiration dates or returns. It's nonsense. It's very 1985. This is the future. When you have 500 products on subscription, the practice is earning $50,000 a year. There are providers in Europe that have 1,000 products on subscription. They're making $100,000 a year. Outsource the testing to us. Let us handle the pick, packing, and shipping, and just help us help you cover your overhead. There are also the opportunity exists to duplicate yourself. Many of our top doctors are building a team of like-minded people around the world. We can always have another conversation about that. And at the higher end, you will get to earn stock in the company. I'm going to show you that in one moment. In our closing couple of minutes together, every one of these direct selling companies are ranked. Business for Home ranks every direct selling company in the business. Zinzino is currently number one. We are the fastest growing. I call it D2P, direct to patient. We've all heard D2C, direct to customer, the number one selling direct sales company in the world. And our mission is to measurably move the dial on public health globally. Most importantly, we will provide a turnkey training system where you receive step-by-step guidance on how to achieve your ambitions. We can show you how to plug and play, put it right into your practice, whether you want the product on the shelf, whether you want QR codes or just sending your patients links. So what are the next steps? Become a Zinzino partner, schedule a follow-up, become a Zinzino customer, and connect us with others. If you would like your patients to listen to another version of this presentation for the lay public, they can listen every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I know we went long today, Joe, because we covered every single slide in the professional deck. So please, anybody unmute yourselves, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.